morning of January 11th, 2013 started as a normal day for students at Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia. In the gymnasium, students in Philip Peplo's physical education class began the school day by completing a worksheet. Some students went to the bleachers to work on the assignment, while others decided to sit on top of a cluster of rolled-up wrestling and cheerleading mats that stood in a corner of the gym. There were around 20 mats that each stood over 6 feet tall and almost 3 feet across. It didn't take long for the students on top of the mats to start screaming for help. They noticed a pair of human feet dressed in socks sticking up through the center of one of the mats and extending down towards the gymnasium floor into darkness. Mr. Peplo reacted accordingly, climbing onto the mat and reaching inside to grab one of the feet, hoping for a response. However, the body was lifeless. There was nothing left to do except for to call 911 and wait for the police and paramedics to arrive. At the same time the body was discovered, Jacqueline Johnson was in the school office attempting to locate her son who hadn't come home the night before. Her son, Kendrick Johnson, was a junior at the school and was the youngest of 4 children. He was a well-liked and responsible student. When the police arrived, they identified the deceased body in the gymnasium as 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson. Lowndes High School has dozens of security cameras watching over its campus. 4 of them watch the gymnasium and are motion activated. After reviewing the cameras, police found footage of Johnson entering the gym on January 10th, almost 24 hours before his body was discovered. He can be seen entering the gym at around 1 p.m. and walking toward the corner where the wrestling and cheerleading mats were stored. There was no footage of him leaving the gym, and he was absent for the rest of his classes that day. Unfortunately, the corner where the mats were stored was out of range of the closest security camera's motion detector, so no direct footage of the corner was recorded. This forced detectives to piece together his death based on other clues such as interviews and autopsy findings. 3 students told investigators that it was common for some students to store their shoes behind or under the rolled-up mats, especially if they didn't rent school lockers. One student stated that he shared a pair of Adidas shoes with Johnson and that after gym class, Johnson would always go to the mats, jump up, and toss the shoes inside the middle of the hole. Laying on the floor nearby the cluster of mats, police found Johnson's science textbook and folder along with a single Adidas shoe. Inside the mat, pinned beneath Kendrick's arm and head, police found the matching Adidas shoe. Police hypothesized that Johnson had entered the gym to retrieve the shoes. He placed his school supplies on the ground, found one of the shoes inside a mat, and then discovered the second shoe inside of another mat. But there was a problem with the second mat. While it had been easily accessible when the shoe was originally placed inside, it now sat behind several new mats that were recently moved into the gym. This meant that Kendrick couldn't easily tip it from the bottom to retrieve the shoe on the gym floor, so he decided to climb on top and reach down through the center to retrieve the shoe. Police believe that he would have held onto the side of the mat with his right hand and lowered his body down head first into the mat, reaching for the shoe with his left hand. When he was lifting himself out, he may not have had enough room to bend his right elbow, which would have prevented him from rising up out of the mat and causing him to panic and lose his grip. He would have then slipped down into the mat head first, trapping himself inside and eventually suffocating to death. An autopsy by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation found no serious wounds and stated that Johnson had died from positional asphyxia, meaning he was simply stuck in a position that prevented breathing, and the case was ruled an accidental death by the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office. Lieutenant Stride Jones, who headed up the investigation, stated, "We never had credible information that indicated this was anything other than an accident." However, after the case officially closed on May 2nd, Johnson's family stated they believed that Johnson had been murdered, and that authorities may have covered up evidence. They wondered how nobody saw him struggling or heard him cry out when other students were entering and exiting the gym until 8 p.m. They wondered if police could be hiding surveillance footage that showed another student following Kendrick in the gym. They feared that the missing camera footage was edited as part of a cover-up. In fact, one of the security cameras does point towards the corner of the gym where the mats are stored, but the footage it captures is extremely blurry. According to school officials, a basketball had previously knocked the camera out of focus. Johnson's family were also troubled by the fact that a paramedic's report noted bruising on Kendrick's right jaw, but this bruising wasn't noted in the official autopsy. According to Lieutenant Jones, this bruising was more likely a discoloration caused by blood settling in the body than it was the result of an attacker. Lastly, they wondered why investigators waited 6 hours to call the county coroner when state laws require them to do so immediately. Was this a simple mistake in police work, or was this a sign of a cover-up? To Johnson's family, the official findings just didn't add up, and this was an unsolved crime. Johnson's family court-ordered a second autopsy from a private pathologist that required their son's body to be exhumed. According to the second pathologist, Kendrick suffered a non-accidental fatal blow. On October 31, 2013, a formal review of the case and the conflicting autopsies was opened up. On June 20, 2016, the U.S. Department of Justice announced that it would not be filing any criminal charges related to Johnson's death. Kendrick Johnson's family filed a $100 million civil lawsuit against 38 individuals. The lawsuit alleged that Johnson's death was a murder and accused the respondents of a conspiracy to cover up the homicide. That lawsuit was subsequently withdrawn. A judge ordered the Johnsons and their attorney to pay more than $292,000 in legal fees to the defendants. This case is still very controversial. Some believe that Kendrick was murdered and are still attempting to identify his attacker. Others believe that the case is solved and Kendrick clearly died from a freak accident. They argue that the grieving family can't come to terms with their tragic loss, finding it easier to be angry than to be sad.